The Insidious franchise has a big secret. Why do so many horror franchises get worse with every sequel and lose money along the way, while Insidious somehow keeps getting lucky? Created by the minds behind the legendary Saw, this series has only strengthened its connection with audiences and clearly has no plans to end anytime soon. But how does it keep pulling that off? Today we're going through every Insidious movie, breaking down the rules of its world, the nature of its astral creatures, the behind-the-scenes story, hidden references, and the key advantages this franchise has over other modern horror series. Hello, this is 11 Slate, and welcome to the ultimate history of Insidious. It is hard to believe, but the first Insidious is exactly the film that saved director James Wan from a string of failures and serious career troubles. You would think that a man who made the first Saw on a tiny budget and launched a billion-dollar franchise should already have a statue in the Horror Movie Hall of Fame while he's still alive. But things were not as bright as they might seem. After making a name for himself with the first Saw, James Wan worked as a producer on the sequels to that brutal horror series. But of course, that was only a pause before his next solo projects. In 2007, Wan's first horror movie after Saw came out, Dead Silence, about a cursed ventriloquist dummy. And with a solid budget of $20 million, the film made only $22 million at the box office. A warning sign. Wan was given his first chance to make a not-so-cheap movie, and it turned into a box office failure. Then in that same year, 2007, Death Sentence came out with Kevin Bacon in lead role. It was a loose adaptation of the novels that had also inspired the legendary Death Wish with Charles Bronson, about a law-abiding citizen who takes the path of revenge and starts destroying criminals. Again, the budget was $20 million, but the box office brought in only 17. And at this point, James Wan's career could have ended right there. All he had left was producing the yearly Saw sequels, which naturally were also gradually losing popularity. Each new installment attracted fewer viewers than the previous one. On top of that, James Wan had earned the reputation of an incredibly violent and bloody director. Not every studio was ready to invest in films that graphic, and not everyone was eager to work with Wan. He needed to prove that he could make something other than extreme horror that collapsed at the box office. Although he was clearly proud of creating the original Saw, and even placed a drawing of Billy the Puppet behind one of the characters in Insidious, James Wan decided to do something new for his career. He wanted to make a traditional haunted house movie for next to nothing, with a budget of only $1.5 million, and with a PG-13 rating on top of that. No bloodbaths and no excessive brutality. Even according to the rules, you are allowed to use the big swear word only once in the whole movie. To be precise, right here.
I don't avoid stressful situations, I'm just dealing with them my own way.
Production was handled by Film District and Blumhouse Productions, studios that were basically newcomers to the film industry. Although shortly before Insidious, producer Jason Blum, the head of Blumhouse, had become a horror star after releasing Paranormal Activity. James Wan invited his longtime friend Leigh Whannell to write the script, the same person with whom he had created the cult story of John Kramer's crimes. He also played Adam in Saw, one of the two main characters. So, naturally, he would also get a noticeable role in Insidious.
What's your contribution?
I'm the writer of it.
At first, the creators planned to name the film after the dimension where the souls of dead people go. In other words, the further. Then they chose the title The Astral, which perfectly reflected the plane where the main characters travel. But in the end, the film reached theaters under the title Insidious, emphasizing the true intentions of the spirits living in the afterlife dimension. So, the setup of the film is very classic. A happy family, a husband, a wife, and 3 children moves into a new house. The father is played by Patrick Wilson, who would later connect his career with James Wan and appear in The Conjuring and Aquaman. His wife Renee is played by Rose Byrne, and their oldest son Dalton is played by Ty Simpkins, who had already played Patrick Wilson's child in Little Children. Dalton can travel through the astral dimension, a rare ability he inherited from his father. But one day he goes too far and ends up trapped by a real demon. Yes, I think it's time to get to the most important part. How does the local astral concept actually work? It is this otherworldly realm that would make Insidious such a durable and long-running horror franchise. After death, people end up in a strange place that reflects our reality, but does not follow the familiar laws of physics. Time and space work completely differently here, and an astral traveler can easily meet a version of himself from the past, or even from the future. The beings that inhabit this place are attracted to only one thing: life. And they're willing to do anything just to get back into our world. The easiest way to do this is through the carelessly abandoned body of an astral tourist. Or rather, not all the inhabitants of the astral plane were once human. Entities can be divided into two categories. First, the spirits of the dead. The first Insidious introduces us to the following dead things. The long-haired fiend. He walks around in a leather jacket and attacks the living very aggressively. His first appearance is definitely one of the best scares in the film. He's played by actor Jay LaRose, whom you definitely remember from the opening of Saw 3 with the chain trap. Also escaping from astral captivity is a strange-looking boy who loves to dance. His unusual appearance comes from the fact that he is played by a very short adult actor. And it is especially worth mentioning the family of doll-like spirits who clearly come from the 1950s. A real tragedy unfolds around them almost in passing. Their daughter, after losing her mind, slaughtered her entire family. Pay attention to her mother. She's played by Bonnie Aarons, who is much better known for another James Wan horror movie, The Conjuring. Yes, indeed, that is the very same nun, also known as the Demon Valak. I'm giving these creepy spirits the Golden Jump Scare Award for the most effective scare in the film. If you have other nominees, definitely write them down in the comments. There's also the strange woman in black, but we should postpone that conversation until Insidious 2, because the spirits who were once alive and now long to escape the astral plane. There are also actual demons living there, beings that never existed in our world at all. Or more precisely, in the first Insidious, we meet only one such creature, the lipstick-faced demon. He practically rules the otherworldly realm and smears lipstick on his face, trying to imitate the habits of the living. But because he has no social experience, the result is more sinister than anything else. Honestly, I want to know much more about this guy, who lives in something like a theater and sharpens his claws on a special machine while cheerful music plays. He's played by Insidious composer Joseph Bishara. He not only wrote the memorable anxiety-inducing soundtrack, mostly built around screeching violin sounds, but also ran around in makeup in front of the camera. In my opinion, this is an extremely unusual movie moment. The composer of the soundtrack became the main antagonist. It's like John Williams playing Darth Vader in Star Wars, or Hans Zimmer wearing Joker makeup in The Dark Knight. These entities will try to occupy Dalton's empty body, and his parents will turn for help to the film's main attraction, a team of supernatural investigators led by Elise Rayner, played by Lynn Shay. By the way, she's the real-life sister of Robert Shay, the founder of New Line Cinema. That's why you can see her in small roles in a couple of Nightmare on Elm Street films. She's accompanied by two comic characters, Specs and Tucker. The first is played by Insidious screenwriter Leigh Whannell, and the second by Australian actor Angus Sampson. He often appears on screen in small but memorable roles. For example, he manages blood donors in Mad Max Fury Road. This trio became so popular that they would return in every installment of the series, no matter which of them actually survived until the end. Although the comic duo of Specs and Tucker initially received a not-so-warm reaction from viewers, over time, they became an inseparable part of the franchise.
You must be Josh.
Yeah, hi.
That wasn't psychic. Elise already told me your name, so...
Later, this image of paranormal specialists using weird gadgets would become central to James Wan's next major series, The Conjuring. In general, the adventures of the Warrens and Insidious have a lot in common: actors, plot devices, visual techniques. Even the mother of Wilson's character, played by Barbara Hershey, is named Lorraine, just like Vera Farmiga's character. It's just that during the production of Insidious, Wan had already gotten his hands on the script for The Conjuring, and he was working through the next film in his head, unintentionally transferring some of those ideas onto the screen. In Insidious, Wan and Whannell combined several horror subgenres at once. It starts as a haunted house movie, then turns into a possession horror story, and ends as an adrenaline-fueled journey into the afterlife. The filmmakers decided to use jump scares and other frightening moments as the main engine, but to do it very carefully. Every scare moment that jumps into the frame had to be unusual. In fact, everything connected to the basic elements of horror had to be presented from a new angle. Take the traditional seance, for example. Everyone holds hands, sits in a circle, and gets scared. Boring. So, Elise puts on an elaborate gas mask, and every few seconds the table is lit by the flash of a lamp. Despite its popularity, Insidious is not the most original movie, and it repeats a huge number of films with similar themes. Take the same seance, for example.
Help. Help.
And now look at the 1980 film The Changeling.
Help. Help. Help.
Pale ghosts chasing a special character in the real world bring to mind the cult 1960s film Carnival of Souls. The whole concept is very similar to Tobe Hooper's famous Poltergeist. Otherworldly spirits terrorize a family and steal a child. Insidious does not deny the similarity and directly references the famous steak scene from the 1982 film. The point is not the borrowing of individual elements, but the way they are presented. Everything from Bashar's music to the camera angles of Whannell's regular horror cinematographer John R. Leonetti is designed to pull the viewer into an anxious atmosphere. You simply do not understand what to expect next. And together with the characters, you figure out the rules of this unusual world. The atmosphere of fear and the incredibly entertaining exploration of the astral plane through strange gadgets are the two main strengths of Insidious. It is a monument to low-budget creativity. The atmosphere of the afterlife is created with lighting tricks and a smoke machine. Jump scares are created through unusual editing. Only a couple of times the film tries to show something truly spectacular, but that is more than enough. Insidious ends with the mandatory cliffhanger. Dalton is saved, his father Josh remembers his long-forgotten gift for astral travel, and by doing so, he accidentally lets the spirit of the woman in the black veil, who had been haunting him since childhood, into his own body. Or rather, not a woman. In the first Insidious, the ghost in the dress is played by a man. This was done to create an additional sense of strangeness around what's happening. What is the spirit hiding? The ghost's gender will only become a full-fledged story tool in the sequel. So, the possessed Josh kills the psychic Elise. His wife finds the photo of the evil old woman, and
Right here.
a sequel was not strictly necessary in this situation. Many horror movies end with an unsettling finale and the victory of evil, just to put extra pressure on the viewer. James Wan had achieved his goal. He proved that he could make a film that was not ultra-violent, but still scary, and could do it with a family-friendly rating. Wan was not really planning to launch a franchise. However, Insidious, made for $1.5 million, would earn $100 million at the box office. The studios would beg Wan and Whannell to make a new Insidious. The filmmakers would resist for a while. Wan would even manage to shoot The Conjuring, a film he had been planning for a long time, and in the end, everyone involved would return to the adventures of the Lambert family in the other world 3 years later. Usually in situations like this, creators say they did not want to return to the series until they had a new breakthrough idea, a great script, and so on. Screenwriter Leigh Whannell was much more honest about it.
How did the story come about, Leigh?
Well, the first film made some money and then you said write a sequel.
And based on that information, it is surprising just how organically Insidious Chapter 2 continues the original and develops the hints left behind in it. The main creative team returned for the production. Wan directed, Whannell wrote, Patrick Wilson, Rose Byrne, and the others acted. Even Ty Simpkins, the astral prisoner Dalton, returned, along with his little brother Foster, played by Andrew Astor, an actor who never really established himself on screen. Why? Because child actors have a habit of growing up and looking much older, even though in the story, not even a month has passed between the first two Insidious films. In real life, a full 3 years has gone by. Simpkins had grown and his voice had broken, so the creators had an additional goal: film the kids in a way that made the difference less noticeable. The only actor they really replaced was the one playing the bride in black. because the role became bigger and required a different dramatic approach. So, the story begins immediately after the first Insidious and develops across 3 storylines. Renee suspects her husband of Elise's death, but cannot find proof beyond the strange photo taken right before the medium died.
Why are you looking at me like that? You think I did this?
Specs and Tucker, now deprived of their leader, try to figure out the details of her death. They are helped by Elise's former colleague named Carl, played by Steve Coulter, another frequent guest in James Wan's films. He played Father Gordon in all the Conjuring movies. In the third storyline, Josh, trapped in the Further, tries to return to his body, visiting different time periods and even influencing the events of the first film. I told you, for a story that was not planned while they were making the first movie, everything turned out surprisingly organic and interconnected. Essentially, each storyline represents a different horror subgenre. The first is about a possessed father trying to kill his family. Think the Amityville Horror and The Shining. The second is a supernatural detective story, with visits to sinister locations and an attempt to uncover the backstory of the terrifying Bride in Black. By the way, some of the scenes were shot in a supposedly real cursed place, the closed Linda Vista Hospital, which you may have seen in one form or another in a bunch of films and TV shows, from David Fincher's Seven to The Cell with Jennifer Lopez.
If she sees you, she'll make me kill you.
The third storyline is a survival horror about trying to escape a cursed place. The plot shifts the focus away from the lipstick-faced demon and toward the Bride in Black, who had been haunting Josh since early childhood and dreaming of taking over his body. It turns out that her, or rather his name, is Parker Crane. The future villain grew up under the control of a cruel mother, was regularly abused, and when he grew older, became a serial killer who committed his crimes in a black dress. His mother was deeply unhappy with his gender.
Your name is Marilyn.
The Mother of Death, as she calls herself, is played by actress Danielle Bisutti, known to many gamers for her role as Freya in the rebooted God of War. And in my opinion, the best scares in the sequel are connected to her. Definitely a nominee for the Golden Jump Scare. While on his deathbed, the killer saw little Josh, and after dying, he began haunting him, hoping to return to the world of the living through the boy who could enter the astral plane. The most remarkable thing about this villain is that he received his backstory completely by accident. In the first film, they cast a man to play the Bride in Black simply to make the image feel creepier. And now they developed that purely stylistic choice into a pretty solid tragic origin story for a villain. Although he did a pretty good job playing a father inside Josh's body. At least he did not stay late at work, supposedly grading papers, while his wife was jumping at every sound next to their comatose child.
What?
Just glad you're awake.
Insidious 2 generously references the first film and looks into the past of many characters. For example, we meet a young Elise, played by another actress who even looks a bit like her, but could not quite capture the medium's memorable voice. So, the original actress, Lynn Shay, dubbed her lines.
I saw what haunts you, and it's not a friend. It's a parasite.
Even though Elise died at the end of the first film, audiences loved her so much that not bringing her back would have been a crime. So Lynn Shay's character helps Josh escape the other world as a spirit. In the end, of course, the killer Crane is defeated, or more precisely, the true catalyst of his crimes turns out to be the obsessive spirit of his mother. So Elise beats the sadistic woman with a wooden horse. This is a very interesting way to exorcise evil spirits. Josh finally returns to his body, and the hypnotist, Carl, once again erases the Lamberts' memories to close the portal to the astral plane. At this moment, Patrick Wilson, Rose Byrne, Ty Simpkins, and the 2 other children who are not very important to the story take a short break. The Lamberts have said everything they wanted to say and headed off to the land of happy endings. For now, meanwhile, Elise and her helpers continue their psychic work, but now with Elise as a ghost. At the end, she comes to bring another child traveling through the Further back into our world, and even sees a potential successor. The little medium who notices her is played by Jenna Ortega, who had not yet achieved worldwide fame, a perfect candidate for the future central character of the series. But then Elise sees... What exactly did she see? The title of the movie? Lipstick Face? Which seems most likely if you listen to the sounds accompanying him. Or did the bride in black return? At this point, it does not really matter. As we have already seen in a living example, Leigh Whannell can write a great connected story based on tiny details from the original plot. For now, one thing is clear. The heroes have won, but something is still threatening them. Insidious Chapter 2 became bigger in scale. The characters leave their homes more often. We see more astral locations and many victims of Parker Crane. The budget increased all the way to $5 million, but it feels like more of that money went to the salaries of the film crew than to specific special effects.
He's got your baby. He's got your baby. He's got your baby.
He's got your baby.
At the time, producer Jason Blum followed a simple rule. When you are making horror, you do not spend a lot of money. Use creativity to get the maximum out of the budget. Then the box office will definitely make you happy. It's a shame that this rule was later forgotten, and Blumhouse Productions, together with other friendly studios, got involved in buying the rights to The Exorcist for $400 million. Surprise, the result did not come close to justifying that spending. Although a little later, Jason Blum would release Obsession, which made more than $300 million on a budget of $750,000. The Exorcist lesson was learned perfectly. Maybe I should talk about every Exorcist movie. Let me know in the comments below, because the things that happen there are so wild you would not believe them at first glance. But for now, it's 2013, and Insidious 2 will make more than the original at the box office. $162 million, which means it will definitely plant an idea in the rights holders' heads, keeping developing the series until audiences get tired of it. And yes, I just replaced the word milk, but I think you understand everything anyway. To support the sequel, a web series called Spectral Sightings was released, telling the story of how Specs and Tucker met Elise. But since the third movie will reset that story and introduce a different version of their first meeting, I will not focus on it too much. In short, nothing special. Even though the Lambert story had come to an end, the very idea of the astral world was extremely interesting, and stories about it could be told in a huge number of ways. New locations, strange spirits, unexpected rules of the world that can be changed however the creators want. After all, they are never written down in detail anywhere. Total creative freedom helped by a memorable visual style and the fascinating atmosphere of exploring the unknown. The only thing left was to figure out exactly how to bring Elise back into the story. You could continue her investigations as a ghost, or you could go back into the past while she was still alive and make a prequel. James Wan would not return for the third film. It's not really in his nature to stay in one franchise for that long. 2 movies is usually the maximum, and besides, he had been hired to direct Furious 7. Low-budget directors were not exactly supposed to turn down offers like that. But he does drop in for a small cameo, playing the director-examiner at the main character's audition. His place at the helm was happily taken by Leigh Whannell, who for the first time tried on not only the role of actor and screenwriter, but also main director. It creates a funny situation. Before this, Whannell was always acting under Wan's direction, and now Wan had to follow Whannell's instructions. Also, the director of the first 2 Insidious films appeared in a photo on Tucker's computer in the second movie. If we treat the films as one shared canon where all the actors are playing the same characters, then it turns out Specs and Tucker eventually became friends with the examiner from the heroine's audition in the threequel. Maybe they told him the true nature of why she failed the audition, and the girl was given a second chance to get in. Although of course I'm just making that up. 2 unrelated cameos, but still nice. The threequel was titled Insidious Chapter 3, even though it's actually a prequel to the events that happened in the Lambert house. The story takes place around 2007, several years before the first Insidious from 2010. Elise is alive. She has not yet met Specs and Tucker, but she has already stepped away from her work. She lives as a recluse with her dog named Warren. Let me remind you, the heroes of The Conjuring have the same last name, and now it's a dog.
It's okay, Warren, go upstairs.
A very respectful reference. It turns out Elise encountered the bride in black during one of her seances, when she was trying to speak to her dead husband, and now she fears for her life. The entity that exists outside of time knows that it will kill her sooner or later, and it keeps hinting at that to its future victim. One day a girl named Quinn comes to Elise. She had tried to speak to her dead mother, but accidentally attached another treacherous demon to herself. and after getting into a car accident and breaking her legs, she cannot really fight back at all, which creates extra tension for the audience. You always feel more sympathy for vulnerable characters. One of the main features of the Insidious films is the introduction of a new evil spirit with the scariest and most memorable design possible. In the third film, that spirit is the man who can't breathe, or the wheezing demon, as the creators call him. An old man in a hospital gown with an oxygen mask on his face. He belongs to a third group of monsters living in the further. He does not want to return to the world of the living. On the contrary, he drags people into his own kingdom, turning them into something like pets. Even though the entity's name includes the word demon, there is a strong chance that this is actually the spirit of a human being who died from breathing problems. But he was consumed by malice, possibly even a colleague of Parker Crane from the previous films, and now he continues his bloody march, attaching himself to people who carelessly decide to communicate with the other world. Why do I say there's a strong chance instead of saying I'm sure? Because neither the film nor the creators explain the nature of this creature, leaving us the chance to imagine the origin of the new villain ourselves. By the way, this is a very effective way to attract attention to a story. Activate fan activity and online discussions through things left unsaid. The entire Insidious franchise handles this kind of ambiguity just beautifully. And the same can be said about the Evil Dead series, which constantly changes the rules of its own world. Have you already watched my big video about every story involving Deadites and Ash Williams, the hero who became toxic to the entire franchise? How is that even possible? Be sure to watch that video after this one. When Leigh Whannell was planning the design of the wheezing demon, he immediately thought of David Fincher's Seven and the victim of sloth, a poor man tied to a bed by a killer for a year. A very frightening and soul-chilling image. Whannell wanted to achieve a similar effect in his own film. In the end, circumstances worked out in such a way that they cast literally the same actor from Fincher's Thriller, Michael Reed McKay. In a more human-looking form, you may have seen him as Stryker's lobotomized son in Bryan Singer's X2. So, the wheezing demon catches Quinn, while the bride in black chases Elise. In the end, everyone defeats their demons, or more precisely, Elise postpones her inevitable death. Which means that when she came to the Lambert house, she understood what was waiting for her, and still rushed in to help. Now this character's death feels even more tragic.
Why did you do that? Why would you do that to me when you know how I feel about that? Why?
When it comes to the further and the main demon, the threequel works very well. Unfortunately, most of the film is devoted to Quinn's family drama with her father, played by Dermot Mulroney.
I need to rely on you to get him up and going. He's lying around like a corpse.
No, I did.
No, I need you to get him ready for school.
Elise constantly refusing to return to her work as a psychic, and so on. Basically, it's the same Western where the sheriff has already hung up his gun, but is forced to take it down again.
I'm too old for this shit.
In Leigh Whannell's direction, you can feel the hand of a debuting filmmaker. He's only learning how to build a film, not just how to write one, so the scares do not always work. I suggest giving the golden jump scare to the following scene.
Get away from me!
Not because it's scary, but because it's so awkward and funny. But for every ridiculous jump scare, there's another much more atmospheric moment, like the one where Quinn knocks off the cast from her legs. Stylish. On the other hand, Insidious 3 definitely has its strengths. First and foremost, the scenes involving the man who can't breathe. But at the same time, there's a lot of roughness and a kind of flatness to what is happening. The astral world still impresses, but not as strongly as before. Although the series should definitely not be written off, its potential is enormous. It all ends with the wheezing demon being defeated with the help of Quinn's mother's spirit, who tears off his oxygen mask. How simple. They didn't even have to beat him with a wooden horse. And Elise starts working with Specs and Tucker, radically changing their appearance.
That you guys should think about wearing something a little better if we're going to be working together?
I love these attempts to show the past by changing the characters' hairstyles. With female characters, this usually works by adding bangs, while Tucker gets a mohawk. Even though these comic characters can be a little irritating with their overly cheerful behavior in a story full of danger and tragedy, personally, their jokes work for me.
Basically a hidden camera.
It's not basic, and it's not hidden.
It's all about the chemistry of the very funny duo of Leigh Whannell and Angus Sampson, who get along well in real life too and sometimes appear together on screen, sometimes even under the direction of Angus Sampson himself.
Get him through customs, shit him out, and Robert's our Arnie's husband. Easiest $8,000 you'll ever make.
So, overall, I'm not a fan of the third Insidious, but I can understand why it made $113 million at the box office on an $11 million budget. A decent jump scare ride with a cool design, but unfortunately with too much formulaic drama involving flat characters. At the end, the lipstick-faced demon comes to Elise. The evil entity knows that she will go to the Lamberts. After all, he exists outside of time. Maybe now it is finally time to tell the story of Ghost Elise battling the red-faced villain. Not exactly. 2.5 years after Insidious 3 in January 2018, the next installment arrives in theaters, Insidious: The Last Key, which would turn out not to be a continuation to Insidious 2, but a sequel to Insidious 3. So, overall, the timeline of the films looks like this: the third and fourth movies, and only then the first and second. When Leigh Whannell was asked about continuing the Insidious franchise, he immediately talked about the time period before the tragedy in the Lamberts' house. They needed to show Elise in her prime. She had returned from retirement, she was ready to beat up a few demons, and only after that could the story move toward the end of her life. But simply giving the medium a new case, like in another episode of a detective procedural, would have been dangerous. Audiences like going to the movies knowing they're about to see a special important story. So, the creators used two marketing tricks at once. First, the word "last" in the subtitle. It just pulls people into theaters. Wait, is this the finale of the franchise? Let's go watch it right now. That's why Resident Evil: The Final Chapter became a box office hit. So did Saw 3D, once again called The Final Chapter, even though several more installments came after it. And of course there's Friday the 13th: The Final Chapter. To be precise, that was the fourth Jason movie out of 12. The creators of Insidious were a little more honest and put "The Last Key" in the subtitle. There's a sort of hint at a finale, but not a full statement that this profitable series is ending. The second trick was to give the story more weight by connecting the events to the past of one of the central characters. It turns out that as a child, Elise lived with an aggressive father, perfectly played in this role by Josh Stewart, near a death row prison block. Even back then, she was already in contact with the other world and encountered an astral demon, Keyface. As I said, a stylish evil spirit is one of the most important engines of this series. And his ability to shut off his victim's screams is one of the coolest ideas in the film, considering that the movie does not really have any other elegant scares. I am nominating those demonic key figures for the golden jump scare. This time, the direction was handled by Adam Robitel, who before Insidious had made the horror fan favorite The Taking of Deborah Logan. His directing style is more confident than Leigh Whannell's first attempt, but the jump scares have lost the former polish of James Wan, and mostly scare you with loud noises and random things jumping out at the characters. In general, The Last Key can be called one of the most action-based Insidious films. After a short backstory, Elise returns to her childhood home in the town of Five Keys, and for the rest of the runtime, she investigates and wanders through the further. Of course, Bex and Tucker accompany her, finally dressed in their familiar shirts and ties. And it turns out that these outfits are actually important to the plot. They belong to Elise's late husband. They have sentimental value for her, and because of that, it will be easier for her to contact her sidekicks in dangerous situations.
She's psychic. We're sidekick.
Who would have thought that screenwriter Leigh Whannell would decide to explain this particular detail of the world building? Plot-important outfits. And for the first time in all the Insidious films, I'm ready to admit that the sidekicks have become a little annoying. They get more screen time, and Specs practically becomes the star. He gets an action scene where he takes down a demon-possessed maniac, and he also gets a very awkward romantic storyline. You can really tell who wrote the script here.
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh.
Let's talk about the main new element of the fourth Insidious, the demon Keyface, played by popular motion capture actor Javier Botet. If you need someone to play a tall, skinny figure, he's absolutely the person to call. As is tradition in this franchise, we do not learn the full details of the demon's motivation or nature, but from a bunch of hints, we can put together a pretty convincing overall picture. So, let's start with this. He's a demon, not an evil spirit, but a real otherworldly entity that had never existed in our world before. Most likely, he formed around the negative emotions of the prisoners, and then attached himself to Elise, who had the ability to open doors into the astral plane. But if we take into account that the town is called 5 Keys, and the villain has exactly that many keys on his hand, then maybe the demon came first, influenced the creation of the town and the prison, and then drew power from it. Keyface's motivation is this: to drag the souls of ruined people into his astral prison and feed on their suffering, rage, and other negativity. In the first version of the story, a huge number of different creepy spirits were kept in the cells of the Further, but they were cut from the final edit, leaving exclusive footage in the trailer.
I need to go deeper into the Further.
To keep replenishing his supply of souls, Keyface corrupts the people living in Elise's house and turns them into sadistic killers. This is what happened to the main character's father, and now it has happened to the current resident of her former home, the one who invited Elise there.
Help me.
That's not a ghost.
The medium meets her brother and her nieces, one of whom, Imogen, also has psychic abilities. Together, the whole group breaks into Keyface's prison and defeats him with the power of motherly love. This guy is not as cool as he seemed at first glance.
Hands off my little girl.
It is absolutely clear what the screenwriter of the 4th film was trying to do: look into Elise's past, create a more intense confrontation with a real demon, and build a bridge to the first Insidious. But too many world-building details were added, and they raise more questions than they answer. At one point, the spirit of Elise's father dies at the hands of Keyface. So, you can die in the afterlife while already being dead? I would like a more detailed explanation. If Keyface is so influential that an entire town is named after him, then why does he constantly live in the basement of Elise's house? And he can freely leave the Further too. And if he can do all that and kill the main character's mother without much difficulty, then why does he need possessed prison guards? Or maybe the town and the prison were the original cause, and they created a concentrated lump of hatred in the form of Keyface. There are so many questions, but at least digging into the rules of the Further is interesting enough. At the end, while saving her niece, Elise opens the red door into the Lambert house and basically lets the lipstick-faced demon inside, which means she herself is the one responsible for her own approaching death. The 4th Insidious takes place in 2010 and directly leads into the coming tragedy of the original film. The movie cost $10 million and, as usual, made much more at the box office. This time $167 million. So they needed to keep going since people clearly liked it. Besides, we should not forget about the cliffhanger of Insidious 2. We still do not know what exactly scared Elise's spirit so much. Development began on a 5th film, and producer Jason Blum said he was planning a crossover between Insidious and Scott Derrickson's Sinister, the one with Ethan Hawke and the Killer Home movies. To hint at this crossover, a toy of the demon Bughuul from Sinister was even placed in the 4th Insidious. But to this day, that meeting has never happened. The 5th Insidious was slowed down by the pandemic and by the search for the right direction for the story. The new installment, subtitled The Red Door, would only come out in 2023, and it would be directed by the lead actor himself, Patrick Wilson. This would be his directorial debut, and Wilson not only directed the film and played the lead role in it, he also performed the song over the end credits together with the band Ghost, the perfect performer for a ghostly franchise. Talks about a 5th Insidious began back in 2020, but the pandemic put development on pause, so fans had to wait a full 5 years for a new film. They did not mind, because the new installment was supposed to return to the heroes of the original, the Lambert family, and finally put an end to their conflict with the lipstick-faced demon. In other words, in the overall chronology, The Red Door takes place after the second film. So 9 years have passed since the sequel to Insidious, if we believe the film, or 10 years if we believe the trailer. Yes, they show different dates. All the main actors return to their roles: Patrick Wilson, Rose Byrne, Ty Simpkins. Even the Lambert middle son, Foster, who plays a small role in the story, is played by the same guy as in the previous films. Josh and Renee's marriage has fallen apart. Dalton behaves like a stereotypical teenager and he hates his father.
When did you become this ungrateful little shit?
No wonder Mom divorced you.
Yeah, that's exactly the future we wanted for them at the end of Insidious 2. But if you show a happy family, there's no conflict. A basic setup for delayed sequels. When Carl erased the astral traveler's memories, he failed to account for one detail. The ripped-out memories left a deep mark on Josh and Dalton. They forgot a long period of their lives, live in constant confusion, and drift away from their loved ones. So the divorce was justified by the story. Fine, at least that's something, not drama out of nowhere. But then the heroes are supposedly exposed to semi-hypnotic actions, regain their memories, and meet the demon again. Only Dalton can close the red door that has appeared throughout the entire series and protect the world of the living from the villain. The concept absolutely works, and it could have turned into a good, tense movie built on the original, which had already become nostalgic by this point. The problem is that the film pays too much attention to those very first movies. So much attention that throughout the entire fifth Insidious, the heroes spend their time remembering what happened in the past, only to finally close the door in a few minutes and head into the arms of a happy ending. We are shown scenes from the first Insidious films, installations that the demon creates in his lair. The heroes discuss the past, shocked to realize that the woman in black, while inside Josh's body, wanted to kill them. But we already know all of this. That's why the red door is 95% waiting for the characters to finally get down to business, rather than a full development of the story. There's also a lot of family conflict. Dalton adapting to college and forming a friendship with an unexpected roommate, and a dive into the history of Josh's father, who turns out to have been an astral traveler too. And of course, we also get several fairly convincing attempts to scare the viewer, and even more unconvincing scares. The golden jump scare absolutely belongs to the strangest moment in the film, with the ghost of a party guy who died from alcohol poisoning. Joseph Bishara returned to the role of Lipstick Face, and revealed a few more details about his character. Aside from his interest in old music, making dolls, and sharpening his claws, the demon also likes creating sculptures based on his failed attempts to break into our world. And that is it. The Red Door focuses on the Lamberts and decides not to reveal any new details about the further or introduce any fresh villains. Oh right, of course we should not forget the references. Carl comes to the funeral of Lorraine, Dalton's grandmother, very awkwardly hiding his involvement in Josh's problems.
Do I know you?
I knew your mother.
At one point, the heroes watch a YouTube show featuring Specs and Tucker, but they do not actually take part in the plot.
I'm Specs, this is Tucker. Say hi, Tucker.
No.
And of course, Elise's spirit drops by to wish Josh good luck. We're also given no details about what exactly she saw while visiting Jenna Ortega's character in the second film. The Red Door would have worked perfectly as a piece of a longer story in a franchise that comes out every year. But as the climactic chapter of the Lambert saga, which people had waited 10 years for, it all feels fine, nothing more. Still, the long wait had a positive effect on the box office. Insidious 5 became the highest-grossing film in the series, a $16 million budget and almost $190 million at the box office. Blumhouse grabbed onto Insidious as its most promising franchise. Most of their projects from around 2023 onward rarely crossed the $100 million mark. And here they had a cheap film from a first-time director, with questionable audience and critic scores, but real box office success. A new Insidious was needed, better yet, two. And in future videos, I suggest we talk about Resident Evil, a brilliant survival horror series that keeps getting screen adaptations that seem completely indifferent to the original video games, their story, and the desperate prayers of the fans. A detailed story about all the video games and their adaptations will soon be released, or has already been released on my channel. Be sure to check it out. In 2026, Insidious 6 comes out, expanding the world building of the astral plane and adding new stylish and terrifying looking spirits. It's being made by Jacob Chase, who has directed a bunch of films across different genres, but without any major hits. With a series like Insidious, he has every chance to succeed. The story will follow a new astral traveler with an unusual ability. She can drag entities into our world. As I said, the concept is wonderful because it can be expanded with total freedom. There are no limits to the creative creator's imagination. As always, they are promising a lot of references to the originals, and Elise is coming back. The creators need to hurry and show at least a couple of stories with the medium helping the living from the astral plane. After all, Lin Shaye is not getting any younger. Besides the official sequel, Blumhouse has also put a spin-off into production called Thread. What exactly it will be about is still unknown, but there are some reasons to worry. It's being made by Jeremy Slater, who wrote, for example, the live-action Death Note for Netflix, Fantastic Four with Miles Teller, and Mortal Kombat 2. The outlook is troubling, but at the same time, the idea is absolutely right. Insidious needs to expand, be handed over to new creators, and tell different stories without being stuck on the Lamberts or Specs and Tucker. They are not the real main characters of Insidious. The real main character is the frightening world, a world that is dangerous to enter, but insanely fascinating to explore. A world without rules. Actually, no, a world whose rules can adapt to each new creator and allow them to tell new chilling stories. And now, click the card with the playlist and watch plenty of videos on my channel about other famous franchises. Thank you for watching. This is 11 Slate.